Welcome to Happy Planet, where we speak with entrepreneurs, investors, and thought leaders who are in the trenches innovating for our planet. I am your host, Abigail Carroll. Today's guest is Paul Holthus. Paul is a blue economy visionary. He is the founding president and CEO Emeritus of the World Ocean Council, affectionately called the WOC, which is the global blue economy business organization that brings together ocean industries in order to support cooperative corporate ocean responsibility. We're going to talk to Paul about his path to founding the WOC, the organization's role and priorities, and the new challenges presented by a challenging political landscape. Let's hear it from Paul. Welcome to the podcast, Paul.
Thank you. Great to be here with you, Abigail.
Well, I am really excited to have you here. We met a few years ago at one of your events in Barcelona. You founded the World Ocean Council. Tell me a little bit about that.
Sure. So the World Ocean Council was really developed to provide a global platform, a global network for the really large, growing, and diverse ocean business, finance, and innovation community. There really had not been an organization that brought together all of the different sectors that operate in the ocean and depend on the ocean together in a place where they can think about then their role as the different components of the private sector and the future of the ocean, its health, its sustainability.
Who are these actors? Give me an example of who's interested.
Yeah, the ocean business community, as we like to call it, is a very diverse mix. We bring together companies big and small in the investment community, innovators, as I say. So shipping, fishing, aquaculture, offshore energy, ports, cruise tourism, coastal tourism, submarine cable, dredging. There's an enormous range of economic activities and economic players in the ocean space. And then there's surrounded and supported by an enabling environment of the insurance industry, the investment community, of course, the legal community. And so companies from the largest shipping companies in the world, such as Maersk, to large aquaculture companies, and across all of those sectors have gotten involved in the World Ocean Council, but also a lot of small and medium enterprises. And the vast majority of the business community in general, and in the blue economy as well, are small and medium enterprises, and they all play an important role as part of that global business and finance ecosystem. And they are the ones at the front lines of both using and managing, in many ways, and responsible for the future of the ocean.
So what are some of the most important issues that these different players are really looking at and concerned about right now?
The business community operating in the ocean has a lot of concerns about how that ecosystem is shaping up into the future. The impacts of climate change, the environmental impacts that they have on the ocean and that they have on each other, and where the positive side of that coin is then the opportunities for synergies, economies of scale in working together. And this is one of the really unique value propositions that led to, and needs and opportunities that led to the formation of the World Ocean Council, is that a lot of the issues that both are affecting and are being affected by the economic players in the ocean space can be worked on and addressed in coordination and through collaboration. And that's what was really missing, was a place for the shipping people to be talking to the aquaculture people, to be talking to the offshore energy people and thinking about, and then the investment and the innovation community. And we should talk a bit about that link between those three, the industry, investment, and innovation linkages, and how they can be leading the way and showing the way on tackling a lot of these issues, certainly in communication and collaboration with the broader ocean community, in the sense of governments, the intergovernmental organizations, the nonprofit NGO environment community, the science community. But there was and is an important role that's increasingly being addressed by bringing together that diverse private sector community.
I can see how that's really helpful to have people in the aquaculture industry and people in the shipping industry who have really different uses for the water, and some have impacts that might harm the other person's interests. Getting
Right.
them all in the same room seems like maybe potentially to be a challenge, but also if you can spur positive discussion and cooperation, that could have a huge impact.
Yeah, and that's really the when we launched the organization in 2009 and then had the first Sustainable Ocean Summit in 2010, the energy that comes from getting those diverse ocean economic players together, that's what really kept us going and really led to going back 10, 15 years prior to that, what really led to the momentum that encouraged me to create the World Ocean Council. At our events, I'll hear from a shipping company CEO say, "Oh, wow, Paul, this is so interesting. I'm a shipping guy. I would have never have met a coastal tourism person or an offshore aquaculture person. And, I had no idea that the offshore aquaculture industry was growing so much and that these large facilities were being built and moving further offshore. We in the shipping industry, we need to know this. We need to be concerned about how we interact with them, the effects of our discharges on aquaculture and safety issues, etc. And in the bigger picture of sort of ocean governance and what's called marine spatial planning, essentially sort of ocean zoning, one of the key roles we've played is getting these industries, again, talking to each other about their collective role and how to share ocean space and ocean interactions, and then engage with the governments and others that are developing this marine spatial planning or ocean zoning that's been moving forward as a way to be proactively helping shape and design the future of ocean use and sustainability.
I want to get to that investing and innovation part and how that ties in. But first, you started to tell the story of why you started this. What's your background and why did you want to serve this role?
Yeah, sure. So I'm an ocean guy. I was born next to the sea and grew up in the Philippines and Hawaii and Southern California, and have been living and working around coasts and on ocean issues, and a lot of time in small islands and developing countries in the Pacific and Southeast Asia in my professional career. And I really initially was coming into it from a science point of view as a kind of the pathway that opened up for me in sort of environmental science and resource management, working in different parts of the world, and always, because of my upbringing, having grown up overseas a fair bit, always interested in the international aspects and developing countries and the bigger sort of global scale ocean concerns. And that's one of the key points here is we always say that the World Ocean Council, ocean in the singular, not oceans, but ocean, because it is one global commons. It's a connected up three-dimensional global ecosystem. And so that was where my interests were, and going from science into environmental management and working with the UN Environment Program as they were setting up what they call Regional Seas Program for the South Pacific, and then moving into working with different of the international environment organizations. And through that work on environment and conservation and international ocean issues, what really became clear to me by the mid 1990s when I was working with the IUCN, which is the global kind of umbrella organization for conservation and environment, helping them relaunch their global marine program. The business and biodiversity, business and environment movement was really starting to move forward, but I wasn't seeing an ocean or marine component to that. I was based in Switzerland at that point and had this great organization that had this global role and mandate to work on environment and conservation, and it was increasingly engaging the business community as well. And I just made it my personal mission, and it became my real passion was then to figure out how to engage the private sector. And I just started reaching out to companies and industry groups and talking to key people across all those sectors, and really meeting a lot of really good people. And as I like to say, there's a lot of good, smart people in good, smart companies that care about the ocean and their company's impact on the ocean and their role within that company. And this was kind of a personal initiative that just kept snowballing. And as I met people, and then I moved on to other work as a consultant and working on fisheries and trade and aquaculture and sustainability and things. But my real personal mission at that point had become to build this network. And I was gradually building it just through outreach and connecting with people. I started getting different industry representatives together at international ocean events, UN ocean events that I was helping organize. And the energy there, Abigail, of getting, as I was saying, getting a shipping person sitting next to a hotel person, next to an aquaculture person, and that really was sort of the testing of the hypothesis. I said, there's something to be explored here. And the feedback I was getting that, Paul, this is really important. We are all ocean industries, but we don't interact with each other. We're in our sectoral stovepipes and silos, and we affect each other. And we have these common challenges that we could be working on together, usefully pollution issues, responding to climate change, etc. And the network kept growing informally, and eventually in about 2008 had a bigger sort of get-together of people at the UN in New York, of this growing group of industry representatives. And they said, Paul, look, you're really onto something here. There isn't an organization like this, and we need something like this. And by the way, I had previously, before I left Switzerland, I had reached out to some of the global organizations there, to the World Economic Forum, the Davos folks, in fact, the head of that, the founder of that, about helping develop an ocean initiative through that existing organization. I didn't really want to create a new business organization, but the feedback I was getting from them and some others back in those days was, what, ocean? Why is this so important? I mean, is there really an ocean economy out there? And this is like an ecosystem approach to business and sustainability focused on a global ecosystem. I said, exactly. That's what I believe is needed, and that's what the private sector people I'm engaging are saying would be really valuable. And I just couldn't get any uptake from existing organizations back in the 90s. And so eventually ended up going with what the community I was building. They said, Paul, we need to get something organized here, and you're onto it. And let's set this up as a global not-for-profit business organization. And so we did in 2009, as I say, and started the Sustainable Ocean Summit series in 2010. And then a few years into that, things continued to grow really well. But a few years into that, the importance of the finance community really became clear to me as a key lever and influencer of what businesses do. And so I started in 2012 or so reaching out to different components of the finance community, again, to say, have you thought about the ocean and the ocean, the diverse range of ocean industries and their effect, again, on each other, on the ocean, their effect, the relationship between climate change and biodiversity issues and all of these ocean industries, and a lot of challenging conversations because people in finance going back 15 years or more just weren't thinking about the ocean. And so I just started reaching out and would find the points of contact that I could, finding an investor who happened to have started out as a marine biologist and would have loved to have had that career, but ended up going into finance. And so they were really happy to know that someone was thinking about the marine environment and the role of the investment community. So I draw them into the network, and we started having finance discussions at our annual events and in our different programs that we've evolved. And so that's been a huge part of the community now. We have some 35,000 people from business, finance, industry, innovation as part of our overall network. And that's really been the strength and energy of this is that big and diverse and growing community of ocean people in the private sector.
Those are some powerful numbers.
It's just been so rewarding to me, and for me, the really most rewarding part of this has been the people I've met who care about the ocean, but they also know they're working to responsibly and sustainably work with the ocean, use ocean resources, develop ocean business opportunities, and this global blue economy, as we now talk about, it's beginning to really become a mainstream topic of discussion over the last 5-6 years. And it's just been tremendous to see how people are now recognizing and embracing the role of the private sector as a partner in the future of the ocean.
I mean, it's responsible for every other breath we take, right? And I can't remember the stat. It covers like 70% of our planet.
71% of the surface, yep. But then you think about the three-dimensional, some
yep.
90%, almost 90% of biodiversity space, yep. When you think about it in 3 dimensions. And then if
Yeah.
you look at the economic dimensions of that, the business ocean, 98% of world trade, international trade goes by marine, by shipping, maritime transport. 98% of international internet traffic is via submarine cable. The amount of energy that comes from the ocean, both non-renewable and renewable, is enormous. Food, particularly in developing countries, hundreds of millions of people whose livelihoods depend upon fishing and aquaculture. And now aquaculture, as you know well, is over 50% of food production from the sea. So the importance of the ocean in so many ways. And then you add in as you say, the role of the ocean in climate and the creating oxygen. The ocean has absorbed something like 25%, if I remember correctly, of the excess heat that's been generated in the industrial age. So we would be cooked as a planet already if it wasn't for the ocean's heat absorbing capacity. But then now that's become a big issue.
Cooking our fish.
Yeah. I mean, the warming of the ocean is a big part of the problem now, along with the acidification of the ocean due to the carbon dioxide that it's absorbed and the heat that it's absorbed. And that's a big planetary challenge now, is how to ensure that doesn't go too far. So we need to be working with the ocean to continue to be able to play its role as our climate moderator, moderating the climate by its absorbing heat in particular, without it going beyond limits, to its potential.
Do you have a theory about why we knew so much about outer space but so little about the ocean? How can we overlook this thing that is so present?
Right. Well, we are terrestrial beings, right? And the ocean has been a place of kind of mystery and danger. I mean, I still see stuff online, people kind of playing up how dangerous the ocean is, how mysterious it is, and why new discoveries that are put into terms of the ocean's such a crazy, dangerous, scary place, as opposed to being a place of wonder and potential and opportunity, and a place of so many wonderful things that we need to then be caring for, because it's caring for us. But, I guess it just hadn't for a lot of people, captured the imagination the way the idea of going to space and exploring and getting to the moon and, and so on and beyond. That's, it's changing, but it's a challenge. There's just this natural tendency to not think about it. Sea blindness is one of the words that people use. It just, people don't think about the ocean. It's just there and so abundant that, it could never be depleted in terms of fishery resources. It could never be polluted to the extent that it would be a problem because it was so big. And now we're realizing that those are misconceptions.
Now that we've discovered it and we care about it, you mentioned, bringing in the finance community and innovation. What are some of the sort of areas of innovation that you and industrials and the finance committee are sort of looking at? What is sort of pushing the growth right now in this so-called blue economy?
There are so many opportunities, Abigail, and it's a big part of the role of innovation is about focusing on where the needs are in terms of innovation, particularly in relation to the private sector. And so I'll get to some specifics in a second, but the broader dynamic is, and we're working at the World Ocean Council to help connect these three communities, as I was saying, industry, innovation, and investment. And I like to call it the 5 or 6 I's. And so those are 3 of them: industry, innovation, and investment. But at the base of the dynamic should be the issue. What's the problem that needs to be solved, or the opportunity that needs to be addressed? And then what industry, what economic player, has that issue or that opportunity, and what is the innovation that could be a part of addressing that problem. And so really linking this to a solution then for that particular problem, be it a marine pollution issue, be it a CO2 carbon sequestration opportunity in the ocean, renewable energy development. There are a lot of, you break down those different needs and opportunities, and they're very specific solution needs. And then what is the impact of developing and implementing that solution? You put all that package together, then the investors have something of interest. And that's the sort of the set of connections that we're trying to develop. To give you a concrete example, one of the biggest environmental impacts in the ocean is the spread of invasive species. And so these are the animals, and this has impacted the aquaculture industry that you know well in different parts of the world, as these animals, these organisms, plants and animals that come into an area where they hadn't existed before, then they displace the native flora and fauna. They can have impacts on aquaculture facilities where you have a lot of fish or shellfish or other organisms collectively being grown, and which can be done quite responsibly and sustainably, but you bring in an unexpected organism inadvertently, and it can create, there can be parasites, there can be animals that destroy the shells of shellfish, for example. The key pathway for invasive species is what's called biofouling, the stuff that grows on the sides of anything that we humans put in the water. And so a pier, any kind of infrastructure, but a lot of that infrastructure are big, well, ships of all sizes, but especially big ships that are moving internationally. The stuff that grows on them gets transported then from one part of the world to the other. This is a problem. There are solutions, though, and this is where innovation comes in. So ways to prevent things from growing on the sides of ships, or ways to very efficiently clean ships, and the regulation is coming along, and so that spurs innovation as well, and the need for industry to respond. And so we ran some innovation challenges very specifically focused on connecting innovators with the issue, understanding biofouling, understanding the solutions that are being thought about, the kinds of solutions that would work well both with the industry and with the coming regulatory regime, and then ran those challenge competitions and brought the real cream of the crop to the attention of both the industry, i.e. the market, and the investment community. And so that's the kind of dynamic we're really working to create, is very targeted, solution-oriented innovation that connects, as I say, to both the industry and the investment community, that can lead to successful entrepreneurship, startups, and solutions.
For a blue economy to thrive, people need to use more sustainable products. But which products? And will consumers actually adopt them? Innovators like you are hustling to figure this out. Spark number 9 can tell you if there's demand for your product. Spark markets your product before it's built using online advertising so you launch smarter. Have a big idea? Vet it with Spark before you build. Visit Spark online at www.sparkno9.com or find them on LinkedIn. I think that's so helpful too, because the blue economy is really just kind of an umbrella, and there's so many verticals in it. So from an investor point of view, that it's very helpful to see the innovations coming from this alliance and this very targeted solution-based, innovation. And it can help the investors weed through the challenge of dealing with new sectors all the time.
Yeah. And over the past decade or so, particularly the last 5 or 6 years, there's been a lot of ocean and blue economy innovation challenge organizations and initiatives that have come up, which is great. This flowering around the world. And from the kind of big tent global look at it that we have at the World Ocean Council, I was seeing all of this, which is the energy, the enthusiasm, the interest in the ocean was great. But the word you just said, targeted, what I wasn't seeing was really that targeted approach. And so it just seemed like a real shame to have this energy from these really bright people that had wanted to really develop solutions, but they were not really given the information and the focus that could make them most effective. And so they're coming up with kind of ocean solution ideas, and particularly tech-oriented things that didn't have a market. We know there's so many startups ideas coming up, but you really need things that are linked to a problem, a market, and that's what's of interest and value to the investment community. Yeah. It's a really great strategy. You mentioned marine spatial planning, and I know that countries are working on developing very specific sites for specific uses. Where are we on the path to a more organized and structured ocean common? The marine spatial planning movement, and as it's marine spatial planning being a term that came up a decade or so ago, or a bit longer, really has evolved out of coastal zone management going back many decades, but then really moving into the marine space, and particularly nearshore areas. And so it's really been a local to national level effort, and particularly the national level efforts for a country's exclusive economic zone has been where the real progress has been, particularly in Europe. But over the last number of years, there's been a lot of efforts to spread this to other parts of the world, and it's particularly focused on nearshore waters and around ports and port cities where there are more uses and there's more sort of competition and interaction amongst the different industries, and then the non-economic players, the recreational use, the conservation needs and opportunities. And for me, this has been particularly exciting to see over the last 15 or so years, as it was something I had worked on out in the Pacific back in the 80s, sort of reef and lagoon spatial management planning. And the efforts to develop the plans and implement them have really, as I say, in Europe in particular, taken at a national level, really become a part of the way things are being done now. And so it's a challenge to there's existing uses, and then there's new uses, as with our expanding uses with aquaculture moving further offshore, with offshore renewable energy really needing space. And so the conflicts, sorting out the conflicts or potential or perceived conflicts, it's a challenge. And what we have been doing at the World Ocean Council was working to get the business community talking to each other, so that they can come with an understanding of each other's needs and issues in terms of spatial requirements and operational requirements, and in terms of physical presence, or if they're mobile, the fishing industry, or the amount of servicing of an offshore wind farm, what kind of vessels and how often and how many that go through then close to aquaculture facilities. I mean, these are the real operational issues. But to have the business community understanding those interactions with each other, so that they can collectively then engage in this broader, usually government-driven process, in which then the local communities, local coastal towns, and the recreational community, the conservation community are key players in many parts of the world. And in the U.S., back when this was getting developed originally under the Obama administration, it was seen as there was a lot of the efforts that were being rolled out at a subnational level, like the Gulf of Maine and other parts of the country, that this was a government thing, and it was really a science thing, and then the environment community and the business community would be the recipient of the plan. And that's not a good way to develop a good plan for allocating space and use. You really need to have everybody at the table. It'll be a messy, more complicated process, but you'll have then the buy-in and the ownership from all of those different players if they're all at the table at the design level and the planning level, rather than being presented with, okay, here's what we've sorted out for you, and this is your corner of this, of the ocean to work in our state or our area. The bigger picture and the bigger challenge now is the global ocean. And so some 45% of the ocean is international waters. One of the most important and exciting things that has happened in the last decade is what was called the Biodiversity in Areas Beyond National Jurisdiction Treaty. It was a decade of negotiations. You could think of it as an amendment to the law of the sea to really create the potential, the framework, the means to address impacts on the environment and biodiversity in international waters. So beyond the 200-mile exclusive economic zone that countries have been allocated under the law of the sea. And this, one of the key components to this is the ability to do area-based management, as it's called in that treaty, now known as the High Seas Treaty, as a more sort of common language version of that, after it got formally finalized a couple of years ago. And now it's waiting enough, the ratifications are being worked on and moved forward in various countries. I don't want to misquote, a certain number of ratifications are necessary for it to become adopted as international law.
Yeah. And
it creates then the means to zone the international component of the ocean. And so that's going to be, again, this challenge of, who does what where, and what are the special places in the ocean. And this is what I've personally been involved in that process. Often in many of the early years, the only ocean business representative at the UN for many of the years in that process. And then as it got more formalized the last few years, formalized in the sense of a formal negotiating process, as opposed to informally kind of building the frame of it and working out the broader discussions that narrowed down in the last few years. Some of the key industry associations and representatives were more engaged. But again, the role and the importance of engaging the economic players was a little bit left to the side, and we really needed to be there, kind of waving the flag, saying there are, all of these economic activities, and that's who's going to be managed by this. You need these people at the table, and myself personally, and the World Ocean Council as an organization, really worked to make sure those economic players were engaged in that process, because their involvement and support of it and helping design the specifics of how it's implemented will be what's going to make it meaningful and useful and practical and implementable. So that's moving forward very, very steadily now, and a really important development for the world ocean.
Yeah. Big Planet, you've got a growing organization. How far do you want to take this?
Well, we continue to grow, and there's others now that have picked up this, also some of the other key organizations around the world within the UN system and elsewhere that have realized the importance of engaging the private sector for the health and future and sustainability of the ocean. So I think that's a measure of success, that we have, in a sense, competition with what we're doing, but that's great. I'm a compulsive collaborator, so it's great to see these other developments. As we talked about earlier, the growth, particularly the blue finance community. So we continue to work to provide that broadest and most inclusive private sector platform that we can, and then focus on particular areas of strength and opportunity identified and driven by that business community, but also helping inform them so that people can see where the needs and opportunities are, particularly wanting to ensure that small and medium enterprises around the world have a home, a global ocean business community home and platform, and especially developing countries and small island states, which is where, as I was saying, a lot of my career and life and work has been. And so that it's not just the big multinationals, but it's that broad and diverse business community. And I'd say particularly also, and this was one of the original components to the big pieces to the value proposition and the hypothesis was that in different parts of the world, different governments will have different priorities, and that if we can harness the role of economic incentives, economic activity, and the business players, and especially the finance community, there can be a level of effort and trajectory on addressing these sustainability issues and challenges that transcends the time and space of political effort. Comes and goes, and even within the international intergovernmental bodies, things come and go, and depending on funding and interest. And so that was what really led me into this space, going back 25 years or so ago, because it was just such a huge gap, and it was too important not to try and pull together this global ocean business and finance community. And I have to say, Abigail, in the early years, the number of people that said it couldn't be done, it was just too complicated, the scale and diversity of that community just wasn't possible to connect. And I said, well, it's too important not to try. And so, we have, I think, achieved that, building that platform and network. And now it's a matter of really continuing to grow it, and really focusing on where it can be most impactful and useful.
Listeners may remember Patrick Breeding, who was on our show last year to talk about Marin Skincare and its clinically proven formula that uses glycoproteins from Maine lobsters to treat eczema and dry, damaged skin. This company has since become wildly successful with this lobster lotion, and Patrick is inviting listeners to a 20% discount on their products by using the coupon code HAPPYPLANET on their website, marinskincare.com. I use this product myself, and I highly recommend it. Amazing. You hit upon two subjects that I want to touch upon. One, I am curious about your finance, your model. Like, how do you fundraise? Like, what keeps the lights on for you?
So we are a membership organization. So companies contribute. We have at the core of this is companies. We have 75 or 80 companies that are the core members at the moment,
Yeah.
and based on we have a tiered set of categories based on the size of the companies. Secondly, through our events, the flagship events are the nearly annual Sustainable Ocean Summit since 2010, and the Blue Finance Summit, Global Blue Finance Summit since 2020. And then we have projects, and so grants and project support through the European Commission and other organizations and some foundations. And then also, fourthly, advisory services in a sense of being able to pull together and provide experts that are coming from a business development and sustainability background to focus on and work with different national or industry initiatives. And so that's created a kind of a mixed portfolio of resources that enables us to keep going. And I would have to mention also, very importantly, the support we have from the city and port of Barcelona, where we have the global headquarters now for the World Ocean Council, and a long-term partnership there in terms of providing us the physical office at the World Trade Center in Barcelona and a level of resources as part of that partnership, which is now in its fourth year and working on the renewal phase of that. And they've just been a tremendously supportive and energetic partner, and it's an amazing city. And we have other parts of the world where we're looking at regional nodes and developing that model further.
Well, you certainly have some dynamism going on in Barcelona, having been there with you there. So we are in not just a big world, but a fast changing one. I've got whiplash from the last few weeks.
Yeah.
How do you create resilience? How do you stay mission focused? Do you depend on funding? We've got NOAA threatened. We've got a lot of, I know you're a global organization. Maybe that's the key. Maybe that's the buffer. But how do you stay on mission when the politics seem to be changing so radically and maybe not in favor of the kind of values and concerns that an organization like yours has?
Yeah, well, it really is this focus on engaging the business community and finance community and addressing what they see as needs as opportunity, and helping them develop and understand those needs and opportunities, as I was saying earlier, that transcends the politics at whatever level. And that can be from a local community level through to a state or province, through to a national and international. And so what you were saying, it's a global approach, and so that is a part of the buffer, that there are other places in the world where progress is continuing and not so complicated. That being said, in terms of the global ocean and relationship with climate issues in particular, but it would just, really for the ocean, the U.S. plays an outsized role. In terms of what happens in the international organizations, UNESCO has the International Oceanographic Commission, IOC, which is the peak body. It's the global meeting place and organizing place for ocean science and what's called ocean observations, collecting of data about the ocean. And the U.S., that ocean observing program at the global level, the U.S. has been supporting up to 40% of that work over many decades. And that's via NOAA. And so what we understand about the ocean and the ocean weather and the ocean climate connections, a lot of that, first, is the ocean is central to so much of that. And secondly, the work to document, understand the status and the changes in the ocean and in that ocean weather climate nexus has been through the support of U.S. taxpayers through NOAA. And we're seeing now that discussion play out in terms of how important is the National Weather Service. Well, it's hugely important to the economy and to people's livelihoods, so to agriculture, to so many, and to safety and security. And so there's definitely some concerns about not having that capacity, that data collection and analysis And the observations, the reports from the shipping industry for well over a century now, all of these things have combined to give us the level of understanding of weather issues, leave alone the climate, issues and that controversy that some see, but even just weather and the weather issues and how strong is a hurricane going to be? Where's it going to go? I mean, this is about people's lives and livelihoods, and it's pretty fundamental to the society and economy that we have now at a local, national, and international level.
Well, maybe if your organizations like yours band together the interests of the private sector, that will have a meaningful voice that can carry through and be heard.
Absolutely, and I think we're starting to see that where those with the economic interest are starting to say, well, hey, wait a minute, these are functions that this is the role of government to do these things, and we need the government, and we pay taxes for the government to do these things because they support the economic potential here and business opportunities and jobs and livelihoods, as well as these other aspects such as safety and security for people and communities.
Mm-hmm. Do you have any advice for new entrepreneurs in the blue economy?
Absolutely. I would say that the key point here is to really understand as I was talking about earlier, the issue. What are the issues that are affecting the ocean, and really focus on developing a solution to a specific issue that then is an opportunity, and then reach out and get to know that industry, the companies that have that problem, and that's a lot of what we do is a kind of a matchmaking, like getting entrepreneurs connected with those that could benefit from their energy and their ideas. So I'd really say that focus, and we talked about targeting, really get to know the issue in the industry that you find exciting and important, and target your entrepreneurial spirit and energy in that direction.
Are you optimistic about our ability to stay ahead of climate change?
I am. Mostly I'm optimistic. Some days I feel like, well, we're not winning enough battles here to be able to say that we're winning the war, the big picture. But I am, and I'll give a specific example and relate this to the ocean. And one of the most important things going on in the business ocean climate world is enhancing the role of the ocean to absorb CO2. So carbon sequestration. So the ocean, as we talked about earlier, has been the biggest sink, the biggest absorber of CO2 already, as well as excess heat. And there are ways to responsibly enhance that role of the ocean so that it absorbs more CO2. And the ocean is by far the largest, has the largest potential to serve that role, to be able to achieve these net zero ambitions that many companies and governments have and have committed to. There are a lot of the focus on sequestering carbon has been focused on forests, which I'm going to be making a little graph with my hands here. Like, forests are this much, soils are better, they absorb more, this much. What's called blue carbon, the coastal ecosystems of mangroves and seagrass and salt marshes, is like this much. The ocean is this much. It's enormous. The potential is many, many times what even the coastal ecosystems, which are really powerful, but many more times than what we can do with forests. So there are, and this relates to your previous question about entrepreneurship, there are a growing number of companies, and we've been bringing them together for many years, that are developing solutions. There's different pathways, as it's called, to enhancing the ocean's carbon sequestration potential by artificial upwelling, bringing nutrients to the surface where it creates a phytoplankton, an algal-based bloom that then the zooplankton, the small animals, eat them. They die and sink to the bottom, taking carbon with them. And so working out these kind of processes, and there's many other kinds, the companies that have been starting up over the last 3, 4, 5 years, doing the science. Has to be rigorous science behind this, and working out the ways to harness and develop the ocean's potential to sequester carbon is one of the most important things that can be going on. And so that's what makes me optimistic, is seeing the energy and the entrepreneurship going into doing the science, developing those solutions, testing them, and starting to bring them online. And so it's a very exciting field. And we started back in 2020, then bringing that ocean carbon sequestration to the investment community, having a series of virtual roundtables over many years. And we continue to do that, as we did at our Sustainable Ocean Summit and Blue Finance Summit in Barcelona last November, as a key business development and investment opportunity that's then related to the ocean as a solution to our climate challenge.
Wow. Well, it's been so great to have you on, Paul, and hear your story and learn more about the World Ocean Council, and I'm just grateful for all you're doing.
Well, this is great to have this opportunity, Abigail, to work with you and get this out to a bigger audience. And I hope this helps inform and inspire people. And we are happy to follow up with anyone who's interested in learning more. And certainly at our website at oceancouncil.org and at our events, we're, all interested parties are welcome to engage. So really encourage people to look into things and get in touch if we can be helpful.
I can vouch for the events. They're fascinating.
Thank
All
you.
right. Well, thanks.
Thanks so much.